Welcome to the fourth episode of Profs Radio, the show to A-star your business by learning from entrepreneurs on experience how to solve problems. I'm your host, Peter Martin, Director of Profs.biz, the only digital company you need to run your business easier, quicker and cheaper. Today we have insurance broker Richard Talbot-Jones from Talbot-Jones Risk Solutions. Good morning, Richard. Do you want to say hi to the listeners and tell them about what you do?
Hi. So, as Peter said, I'm Richard from Talbot-Jones Risk Solutions. I own and run the company with my wife, Claire. We're commercial insurance brokers, so that means we don't do any home or motor or travel business, but we just do commercial contracts, primarily dealing with clients in the third sector and professional practice firms.
Thank you for telling us about what you do there. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So, I'm trying to think where to start really. I left school, went to university, studied archaeology, which is not very useful when it comes to insurance. I joined the army after university because that's what unemployed archaeologists do. Unfortunately, I injured myself during the Sandhurst commissioning course, so I ended up unemployed, crippled, on an army pension with a useless degree. So after a few years of sort of doing seasonal work, short-term contracts and temping, I fell into a job working for Zurich in Cardiff. So dealing with home and motor insurance, talking to insurance brokers, and quickly working out that they got paid a lot more than I did. So thought that the life of a call centre drone probably wasn't for me, and applied for some roles with insurance brokers. And luckily, there was one in the northeast where my girlfriend, now wife, was based. So I took the job, moved up north, and then worked for probably about 8 years as an insurance broker for other firms before deciding to set up on my own.
Great. And as we know, life in business presents many challenges. You've touched a little bit there about a challenge where you obviously had your injury. Is there a challenge you've come across when you've been in setting up your own business that you can share with all the profs listening today?
Sure. I mean, when we set up, we had quite a small budget. And being a regulated firm, we have to have money set aside that we can't use. We just have to have it there to satisfy the regulator. So we spent a lot of money on a website. We spent money on getting an office. And then when it came to the kind of operational side of things, we scrounged a printer. We scrounged a PC. We had our old home PC. And we brought them into the office and used those for probably about 2 years. And it worked all right at the start, but because we had to use Windows 10 and because we had to use Office 365 in tandem with our particular sort of broking software, the computers didn't last very long. They got very slow very quickly. At the time, we were being almost overwhelmed with new business inquiries, which is great, but it's not very good if you can't physically kind of process those quotes. So we were having phone calls, we were collecting information, and just sheets of paper stacked so high of sort of things to do and process, and I just could not get through it, and it was just driving us nuts. So we were lucky at the time that we had a member of staff who was kind of interested in IT. So he was employed to do business administration, but his kind of real the thing that he was really interested in was working with computers. So what we decided to do was just give him the task of finding something good that would work. So we spoke to a couple of other brokers who use our sort of same systems as us, and worked out a kind of a wish list of things. So how much RAM, how much space on the hard drive, what processor, and all that kind of stuff, which I don't really understand. So we gave him the kind of shopping list, and off he went and had a look to see what we could find. Which was great. So we just got some found some fairly cheap refurbished PCs, and they sort of met the minimum criteria. So we bought them, set them up, and started getting them going. But I mean, obviously, so the challenge really was around sort of efficiency and capacity. And if you've got a great reputation for being a good insurance broker and you've got tons of leads, but then you let them all down because you can't actually give them what they want, that's a challenge. You're going to be in trouble quite quickly.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's really emphasised on how important back-end infrastructure really is, because as you say, you can be great with the people, great with the clients, but it's then that delivery. And there's no point really spending money on things that just become a cost if they're not kind of saving you time and money. Just before we hear how Richard has solved that problem, we've heard a little bit about how he's done that. I just would like to take a minute to let you know of our community, Entrepreneur Profs, where you can meet other entrepreneurs and learn from them, as well as find all the tools and software that we recommend. Just go to entrepreneurprofs.biz. You can also join our free Entrepreneur Profs Facebook group. So thank you for talking about the issues that you faced there. And you've mentioned about talking to other brokers and stuff. Is there any other way that you managed to solve your issue, or is there sort of any other kind of things that you put in place to improve your infrastructure?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, hardware is just kind of part of the picture, part of the puzzle. But also, we were concerned that we didn't want to just spend sort of thousands of pounds of money on IT equipment, only then to have the exact same problem within a year or two. So we kind of took the opportunity of having a clean slate. And when we set up the computers, we deliberately tried to put on as little as we could. So we had, the main kind of Office 365 apps on there. We had our broking software system on there, maybe one or two computer games. But seriously, trying to keep the hard drive as free as possible. So we took advantage of things like OneDrive and SharePoint, even Dropbox for some things, and tried to make sure that whatever document, image, PDF, whatever it was that we were dealing with, when we saved it, we found a home for it that as often as possible was not on our hard drive on our physical computer. Which obviously has benefits for sort of backups and restoring systems and things like that, but also meant that kind of capacity that we gained by having a new system wasn't, I suppose it will slow down over time, but it won't be eroded quite as quickly as if we were storing everything physically on the computer. So all our client data is held off-site. 99% of our files are held in the cloud. Obviously, the client files are in a different place to the kind of the kind of business files, I suppose, that just relate to us. So most of them are off the hard drive. They're in different places, which means our systems are running better, more quickly. They've been in place for 6 months, and there's been no degradation in terms of speed. But it also means that, I'm an insurance broker, I work in the sort of business of risk, but it means that if something goes wrong with our system, all we need to buy is an off-the-shelf computer or laptop, PC laptop, with the same kind of
specifications.
Attribute specifications of the old ones. Put it at home, put it in the office, and once Office 365 is installed, and once the broking software is installed, we can be up and running we could probably be up and running within the day, and obviously with what you hear about kind of ransomware and viruses, hacking and all that kind of stuff, the ability to be back up and running that quickly is kind of key.
I mean, that is a perfect example, really. And so I'm glad you've touched on that, of how a cloud infrastructure and the hardware in your office can work really well together to improve efficiency, security, and actually a consistency. So a plan B, if anything goes wrong, you can be back up within that day. And sometimes it's so easy to focus on one or the other. Let's get really good cloud services, but running them on rubbish machines, or get the new fancy gizmo, but actually not think what happens if this thing's break, and what's the backup if we do that. So that's a real good example, really, of how you've got those cloud services and hardware
Can't
to really work together.
Yeah.
Well,
we had some clever people advising us as well. So, but some of it is common sense, I think, as well.
Yeah, I suppose it takes into consideration kind of your skills as a risk solution as well. Like, what's the risk of if that one breaks or that breaks?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep things simple.
Keep it simple. That's a big one, yeah, because there's so many gizmos out there that we can get involved in. So coming back to kind of your role here, what is your top tip for someone who's maybe looking to buy insurance?
Yeah, so I think, I think a lot of the times people buy insurance and they're buying a particular policy, and they think that once they've bought that policy, then that's it. That's all they have to do in order to manage the risk to their business. Or that's the one that they buy because they need employer's liability or something similar. But I think for me, the biggest tip I could give anybody who's looking at insurance is try to think of insurance as just one part of a risk management strategy. So I suppose from an academic or traditional point of view, risk management consists of three pillars. You've got risk mitigation, risk control, and then risk finance. And then under risk finance, insurance is just one of the options. So, there are so many things you can do before you even buy insurance to, reduce the risks that are faced by either the business or the owners of the business. Even things like just incorporating as a limited company that can, can save your house, so why not do it? Yeah. But yeah, I think, and then if you've got insurance that then kind of complements the other strategies you have in place. So, the physical security, the fire safety, financial controls, or whatever it might be, then it'll work sort of properly. It'll work effectively. If you buy insurance and then don't do anything else, then the insurance company's probably not going to pay out if something goes wrong anyway, because there are so many requirements within an insurance policy that you've got to comply with. And, people don't often think about that or read the small print.
That's a good point. And there is lots of ticks to tick, I suppose, lots of boxes ticking. We're very important that we do that. Well, yeah, for me, I thought it was just a case of get a piece of paper, and obviously not.
No, a piece of paper is not going to stop a fire. So, you need to have something else in place.
And lastly, what is your favourite piece of software or tool, and is there anybody that you would recommend?
My favourite piece of software at the moment is probably SharePoint, partly because, and I know people are divided on SharePoint, but we were using OneDrive, and I was using OneDrive thinking it was SharePoint, and then realised that it wasn't SharePoint, and the thing that I wanted was SharePoint. But we found it really useful because we can group documents together. So instead of having a physical employee handbook, we've got a sort of digital one. We've got HR templates in another place, with business continuity plan in a different place, and then we've got our own kind of workspaces. So instead of leaving stuff hanging around on the desktop while we're working on it, we can just dump it in our workspace and go back to it whenever we like. So I'm sure we're probably not using it as well as we could, but I mean, for us, it's
as long as it's working for you.
It's working. The main thing, yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody could come in and make it better in about 10 minutes, but I think for now it's doing a really useful job. And yeah, and it's one of those things as well, if you pay for something like Office 365, you may as well find out what you get for it.
Yes.
The different things you can use rather than just Word.
Get the maximum use for your money. It goes back to what you said before, what if there's a fire? It's all on the digital, not hanging around on the desk fueling it.
Exactly. And in terms of someone to recommend, well, I mean, we've done really well in terms of our marketing by kind of I suppose, how would you describe it? Sort of combining offline and online word of mouth. So word of mouth on social media, and also the kind of face-to-face. So we generally get really good relationships with clients, potential clients, either because we meet them face-to-face and then follow up online, or we meet them online and then follow up face to face. So I kind of think that getting a real handle on social media and trying to use it in the way that you would just network face to face is really, really important. And one of the people that's kind of helped us work out how to do things and give us the confidence to go out and kind of use it more naturally is James Lane from Hypestar. So I would recommend that you talk to him and that people listen to what he has to say, because he's helped us a lot in our business.
Brilliant, thank you. And before you go, how can people connect with you?
Well, our company is on social media, as you might expect, having just said that. We're on primarily LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We're on Google Plus as well, but I don't really know how much people use Google Plus.
They've actually cancelled it now. They've turned it off. Yeah.
Oh, well, don't bother looking there then. And then I've also got a professional profile on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me directly.
Okay, well, thank you so much for appearing on this podcast. That's been really useful to people out there who maybe need to think about the risk in their business and the steps that they need to take. Remember, Profs, to check out our community and Facebook group. Go and A-star your business today.